Urgent, topical, timely. Power 98.7. Getting you talking about what matters.
Yep. Now we turn our attention to this when we talk about what matters. And these are certainly matters that matter in our country and to our people. So the Gauteng City Region Observatory today announced the launch of a new research initiative titled The Colored Community in Post-Apartheid Gauteng. The project is aimed at seeks to delve into the ongoing societal and economic challenges faced by the colored community in Gauteng, a historically marginalized group in South Africa. The recent findings from a Gauteng City Region Observatory Quality of Life survey, that's the survey number 7, have highlighted significant disparities in safety, economic security, political satisfaction, and experiences of racial discrimination that persist within this community. Let's hear more now. Joining us on the line is the researcher in the Gauteng City Region Observatory, Shamsunisa Miles Timotheus. I hope I got that right. Good evening to you.
Good evening, TT and listeners. You got that right.
Fabulous.
Thank you for having me.
I did practice, and congratulations on having the most unique name I've come across.
Thank you.
So let's talk about the research that you are doing. What's the idea behind it, and why was it necessary for you to embark on this project and focusing specifically on colored people or the colored community?
So this is something that came to our attention when we were looking at our data, like you mentioned, from the Quality of Life 7 survey. So, sometimes we look at data and we look at South Africa or we look at Gauteng and we get like a sense of what's happening. But we just aggregated this data and we said, what's happening for different population groups? And we discovered some concerning data points that was very particular for the colored community. And this is what prompted us to launch a project which is dedicated to this. And it also led to the competition to get the voices of South Africans.
Okay, and so how did you go about the work that you've done, or what did you set out to do in terms of the research? I mentioned now in the introduction that the idea was to delve into the ongoing societal and economic challenges. How did you do that?
Well, the project, TT, it's still in its infancy. So remember, we just launched.
Of course, yes. Or how do you plan to do that, I should be saying, yeah.
Yeah, so we've done some preliminary analysis, and it gave us an idea of what's happening in terms of safety, economic security, political dissatisfaction, and racial discrimination. And the first thing we want to do is the competition, where we're reaching out to South Africans and say, let's engage in a healthy dialogue about your experiences, your perceptions, your knowledge about the Gauteng colored community. And so that's step 1. Step 2, we are writing an edited volume where we're going to look at multiple themes. So we want to know the history of colored people in Gauteng, the political attitudes, their subjective well-being, the role of religion in colored people's lives. So we really want to look at it in a holistic way and add to knowledge.
Okay. And how many communities will you be tapping into?
So when we refer to the colored community, we're really bringing together the colored population in Gauteng. So it's not necessarily because you live in a particular area, but we're saying that it's all colored people who are residing in Gauteng.
Okay.
But obviously, we do acknowledge the fact that the majority of the people who live in Gauteng are living within predefined colored areas.
Yes, that we still have that segregation or townships that are predominantly one race over another.
Exactly.
Right. And so, of course, as you said, in the prelim, tell us a little bit more about the preliminary work that you've done and what you were looking to establish with some of the preliminary work that you did.
So we looked at different variables, and one of them was safety, because, on the media, we see a lot about what's happening in colored communities with regard to safety. And we at, there was a particular question where we asked people, what is the main problem that you are faced in your community? And 2.3% of colored people said gangs, and 2.3 sounds low, but it's quite high compared to the average, where the average is 0.2% of people in Gauteng see that as a problem, whereas for colored people, that's a lot higher. We also asked them about the crime situation. So in the area that you live, has the crime situation gotten worse? Is it better? Has it stayed the same? And we see that 61% of the colored respondents indicated that the crime situation has gotten worse. And that is compared again to the provincial average, which is 48. So compare that 61% to a 48%. And then we looked further and we're like, okay, what is the community kind of responding to this? And one of the other questions was, if there was a protest in your community, what was this protest about? And in the colored community, within colored people, 17% indicated that the latest protest was because of crime and safety issues, compared to the provincial average of 4%. So we see these differences in numbers. In terms of economic security, we asked people whether they felt like they were able to save money, and we found that 26% of the colored respondents said that it's just impossible, and that is from an average of 17% of Gauteng. And if we take that further and we look at political dissatisfaction, the population group with the highest dissatisfaction, particularly with local municipalities.
Interesting.
If we think about what's happening within these communities. And yeah, the final one is racial discrimination. So we asked people, how often do you feel personally racially discriminated against? And 18% of the colored residents in Gauteng said that they either always or often felt racially discriminated against.
Wow, that's very interesting. And I wonder, in those preliminary engagements that you got into, to what extent there was a reflection of, because I think 2025 South Africa, one thing we have certainly all got to learn the depth of grievance within the colored community. And then I think that was basically brought to the fore through the relative success of a party like the Patriotic Alliance, which tapped into those grievances. Was that a theme that came through, that this feeling of colored people feeling like they're still marginalized?
So that is exactly what we want to find out, right? We want to understand the political dissatisfaction, what's leading it. I mean, we have an entire chapter that's dedicated to political attitudes and to looking into that. So we're not there yet, but we will find out. And
then, because economics, I think, people's most, the biggest concern of all, if not most South Africans. We all worry about the state of the economy and the lack of jobs. And I don't know, was there a sense that you got amongst colored communities that they perhaps were getting the short end of the stick? I think that's a sentiment that you've often heard expressed anecdotally. That whole thing about, during apartheid we weren't white enough, and now in a democratic dispensation we're not black enough.
Yes, so part of this problem is that information is not available. It's not there. So even within our survey, it's a close-ended survey. So you kind of have to, answer particular things. And so what we do want to do is find out more of that. But I think what's also very important is I read the employment equity report done between 2023 and 2024. And what I found very important was that there's an underrepresentation of the colored and the Black African working force. So the amount of the percentage of working force as Black African and colored does not match the people who are in the actual workforce. And I'll give you a number. Like if we look at top management, top management in private companies, in the private sector, we have 14% who are Black African. And I mean, that's way below where we're supposed to be. And then we look at colored individuals who are 5.9% of top management, and we are over 8% in the South African population. So there's a lot.
And just in terms of, and I mean, as you said, you are going to not confine yourself two communities, but because of the nature of South Africa's the way that our towns are planned, we were going to have to go to certain townships to interact with colored people. But I don't know to what extent it's, it is still accurate. I don't know whether that's correct word to describe people, almost colored people, as if they are, or the colored community, as almost if it's a homogeneous group. I mean, to what extent is it?
That's a very good question. I mean, the colored people are very diverse, and I think every population group is diverse.
Yes.
Within the Black African group, we have so many ethnicities. And to group people together it's a disservice to people, right? Because we're so different. But in reality, it's the same with colored people, is that they are so diverse, but they do share similar experiences.
Because I am thinking about the experience, and then just from purely anecdotal, not through any research that I've done, that I know that, for example, if you go to KZN, colored people in KZN, the most spoken language amongst them is not Afrikaans. Whereas in Joburg and was definitely in the Western Cape, that is the case. That the first language, or the language of choice, is Afrikaans. So that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. That say, but colored people are not necessarily one homogeneous group.
No, definitely not. And I think that's also why this project is so important, is because a lot of the times the Gauteng colored group is overlooked. Because when we think colored, we think Western Cape, because that's where the majority of the colored people are. So when you look at the literature, there's very rich literature on the identity of the colored community in the Western Cape. And you don't really see that for Gauteng, which is what we're trying to uncover. I mean, personally, people see me and they're like, oh, you must be from Cape Town. And I'm like, no, guys, I'm not from Cape Town.
Oh, wow.
It's an automatic assumption. And I want to know about the history of the colored people in Gauteng. I have 3 generations that were born in Gauteng. And I mean, if I had to ask you, Titi, what's the history of colored people in Gauteng?
Oh, wow. Boy, why would you ask me that? I wouldn't really know, honestly, because, again, the question would be, which colored people in Gauteng are we talking about? For example, you'll talk about, let's take a community, say, on the West Rand in Randfontein, where Tukomsres is. Tukomsres and Mohlakeng are so close that there was so close to one another that there's a lot of people who kind of fall on both sides of a divide. There are colored people who've got relatives in Mohlakeng and vice versa. So that's why that would be, if I were to answer that question of what the history of colored people in Gauteng would be, I would ask, which colored people are we referring to?
Yes, so generally, like I said, we're taking all colored people, putting them in a box.
Yeah.
So we're looking at colored people as a whole, and in certain instances, there will be case studies. So, for example, with political attitudes, we're going to look at voting districts, and those voting districts will represent particular areas. So the different themes look at different things. So some themes are going to look at the colored community as the colored population in Gauteng as a whole, not as an area. And then in other instances, they will be separated to look at the differences between the groups.
You were referring to you were referring to the amount of history and research that is out there and stuff that has been written. In fact, my colleague Tessa Dooms also wrote a book on the very subject. Wonder whether she was a resource or would be or this in the work that you'll be doing, she could be a resource.
100%. Yes, her work is brilliant, and we look into her work. We look into Professor Muhammad Arikari. We look into Dimitri. So there are a couple of people that we are going to engage with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'll be it'll be very interesting to hear what comes out of it, and it'll be absolutely fascinating as well about, especially choice of people's identity. About, I was making reference when I was talking, throwing ahead to this conversation to say that there was a time, and I'm sure you will remember, when somehow this phrase or expression so-called, that little prefix would be put before the use of the word colored. You know, there's a time when that was something, almost as if it was something that people were now saying is problematic to call people colored, you know. However, we then got past that. I'm not sure when, at what point, where actually said people, you know, colored people then themselves, or many people in the colored community said, no, actually, hold up. Being colored, yes, it was a classification, but it also happens to be who we are as a culture and an identity. I mean, which is a subtitle of Tessa's book, ironically, Colored, How Classification Becomes Culture.
Yes, so I think the term colored is so contested. So even within the project, we use quotation marks because remember, like you said, we're taking this group that's not necessarily homogeneous. They're different, and we're putting them under one classification. And it's so contested because you have people, like you said, who identify and are proudly colored, and that's brilliant. But you also have people who indicate that, you know what, this term was actually, we were forcibly given this label, because at the end of the day, race is a social construct, and we need to understand the sensitivity of it. And I mean, within the project, one of the things we want to do is find out from colored people, do you identify as colored? And what does that label mean to you?
Now, I certainly am looking forward to seeing what will come out of the research. So talk to us about where you go from here and how this research project is going to unfold.
So the first is the call for written pieces competition. Let me put it out there, listeners. We have a competition, and we would like you to send us any written work that you have. And remember, although the topic is on the colored community in Gauteng, it's open to everyone because we all have experiences, we all have opinions, and we all have something to say. So this gives you a space to have what you want to say in a healthy way, where we can bring these narratives out and amplify these voices of all South Africans. So that's the first step into the competition. You can get more information at www.gcro.ac.za under our news item, or on our Instagram at ACR_observatory. So after the competition, we're going to be working on the research. So interviewing people, getting key informants, analyzing data, and creating our edited volume. And after that, we need to disseminate. So what we're hoping to do is to have a symposium. And within the symposium, we want to have government officials. We want to have people from different communities who are genuinely interested and want to learn about the colored community in Gauteng. And we want to have scholars. And we want to bring everybody together in a space where we can now start this dialogue.
Yeah, sounds exciting. And these written submissions, any restrictions, or can they be on any length, and how much, when's the closing date?
So submissions are in the form of essays, poems, personal reflections, or short stories with a word limit of 800 per piece. But you can submit up to 3 different pieces. And so the deadline is September the 26th. Anyone in South Africa can enter. Even if you're under the age of 18, we just ask that you get parental consent. And then the themes are history, political attitudes, subjective well-being, location, economic and social identity, gender, race, language, religion, identity. And then there is a prize. So we have store vouchers for our top 3 entries. First prize being 2,000 Rand, second prize 1,500, third prize being 1,000. And then additionally, we're going to have selected entrants who we include in our online publication. So we're going to publish this work on our website for anyone to see, right? And they will receive a 500 Rand voucher as well.
Fantastic. Sounds interesting way of going about it. Have you done something along similar lines before in terms of the research, your past research project?
No, so this is my first baby, TT.
Oh, wow. There you go. Hey, and what a monster of a project to take on.
Yes, indeed. It's scary.
Yeah, but ever so important, though. Okay, so we'll look forward to how much time did you say you're going to give yourself to do the research work as well?
So the edited volume will probably only be finalized at the end of 2026, and then we'll hope to have a symposium at 2027.
Well, I hope to be chatting to you then in a year's time to hear how this went. It's a very exciting project, and I wish you all the best with it. And thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you for having me, TT.
That's Shamsunisa Miles Timotheus. She is a researcher with the Gauteng City Region Observatory, and today they launched the new research initiative. It's going to be titled "The Colored Community in Post-Apartheid Gauteng." Yeah, so and you are invited, as you heard, to participate by sharing in written form anything whether it could be a poem, an essay about your experience. If you're a colored person or you identify as colored, talk to us about that. Write about that and submit it. If you want to share your experiences with these communities, maybe a personal family history where, remember not so long ago, when was it? Earlier this year, we had an interview with a lady that put on a play, which I can't for the life of me now remember what the name of the play was. Fano, the lady who discovered, I think, when 20 years into her life, that she's actually colored and had grown up as a white person, that the father had lived this lie for a long time, married a white woman, had children with a white woman, but had kept this secret that he was actually colored and grew up colored and had colored relatives and everything. So those are the kind of stories that I think these researchers are looking for. So go check out their website, gcro.ac.za, and look under the news section. And then you'll also get more information on the competition that they are running.